Imagine this. You've just stepped off a long haul flight. Or, maybe you're walking out of a towering glass and steel office building right into the heart of a bustling, unfamiliar city.
Oh, yeah, that overwhelming feeling.
Exactly. The air is thick with exhaust. The noise is, it's almost like a physical pressure against your eardrums, and there are just thousands of people rushing past you.
Right, and you're just exhausted, completely overstimulated.
You just want to get from point A to point B. So you step to the curb, you raise your hand, and you hail a ride. And that moment, the moment you pull the handle, slide into the back seat, and that heavy door just thuds shut behind you.
It's an instant shift. The noise of the city is just, well, it's completely muffled.
Yeah. Whether you're navigating some new capital halfway across the world, or traveling for a high stakes business meeting, or, just trying to get home after a grueling 12-hour shift, you have just entered a very unique, highly pressurized social space.
It really is. It's this incredibly distinct transitional zone
Hmm.
because, you're physically moving through the public infrastructure of a city, yet you're completely enclosed in this temporary, highly intimate bubble.
A bubble with a total stranger.
Exactly. A person you've likely never met and honestly will probably never see again.
Uh,
The contrast between the chaos outside the glass and that forced intimacy inside the cabin is, well, it's jarring if you actually stop to think about it.
it's like a confessional booth on wheels, or this strange little time capsule just floating through gridlock. You and a stranger are locked in a steel box together for a set amount of
And
time.
you aren't just navigating the physical streets either.
Right. You're suddenly forced to navigate this entire unspoken landscape of social rules, linguistic landmines, and these really subtle power dynamics, which is exactly what we are going to unpack today.
We've got an incredibly diverse stack of sources for this deep dive.
We really do. We're looking at practical English language conversational role plays for travelers, dispatch guides, and even etiquette manuals for UK cabbies.
Yeah, and we're also looking at the latest iterations of ride-hailing app features, specifically how technology is trying to basically engineer human interaction completely out of the equation.
Oh, the tech side of this is wild.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we have this fascinating look at a best selling Egyptian novel told entirely through the voices of Cairo cab drivers.
Plus, a deeply analytical academic study examining the sociology of minibus taxis and these really provocative bumper stickers they display in South Africa.
Right. So, our mission here is to give you the ultimate multifaceted toolkit for the back seat. We want to start by looking at the practical linguistics. The actual phrases you need to navigate a ride smoothly if you're a student of travel language.
Or really just someone trying to assert themselves in a foreign transit system.
Exactly. But then we want to plunge far beneath the surface. We're going to explore the psychology of the ride, the unspoken etiquette of like where you actually place your body, and those profound power dynamics playing out every single day.
Because before we can even get to the sociology of bumper stickers or, the psychological unburdening of a late night ride, we have to look at the foundational transaction.
The actual getting in the car part.
Right. The way you initiate the ride, the language you use to state your destination, and how you handle the financial reality of the fare. That dictates the entire power structure of the next 20 to 40 minutes.
So let's analyze that initial interaction because it is essentially a high speed negotiation.
It really is.
Our sources that focus on English travel phrases, they frame this as a practical role play for language learners. But looking closely at the specific phrases they recommend, it reveals a ton about how we establish territory in the car.
Definitely. For instance, when you successfully hail a cab and open the door, the recommended template for stating your destination isn't just barking an address.
Right, you don't just yell airport and jump in.
Exactly. The tutorials emphasize phrases like, I would like to go to the International Airport Terminal 5, please. Or, can you take me to the Sunshine Hotel, please?
And the inclusion of please and phrasing it as a request rather than a command like saying, can you take me, is performing a very specific psychological function, isn't it?
It is. In linguistics, this is related to politeness theory and face-saving acts. When you get into a taxi, you are literally entering someone else's domain.
They control the vehicle, the locks, the route.
Exactly. So by phrasing the destination as a polite request, the passenger is subtly acknowledging the driver's autonomy while still directing the service. It de-escalates the inherent tension of just giving orders to a complete stranger.
Wow, yeah. And I noticed that dynamic even more clearly when the tutorials tackle
Oh,
luggage.
luggage is a huge friction point.
It is. One of the practice conversations goes, the passenger says, I have a big bag, and the driver asks, do you want me to put it in the trunk? To which the passenger replies, yes, please, thank you.
Or they might initiate with, can you take my handbag to the trunk?
Right. And I have to ask, why is luggage such a critical friction point that it requires its own specific set of conversational protocols?
Well, because luggage bridges the gap between the passenger's personal property and the physical infrastructure of the vehicle.
Ah, okay.
The trunk is traditionally the driver's exclusive territory, right?
Mm.
It holds their spare tire, their tools, maybe their personal items. When you ask to place your bag in the trunk, you are requesting an expansion of your footprint within their domain.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, the verbal negotiation ensures both parties agree on how the physical space is being shared. If a passenger just walks to the back and starts yanking on the trunk handle without speaking,
Oh, that feels like an invasion.
feels incredibly aggressive. You're violating the spatial boundary before the social boundary has even been established.
And speaking of friction, I feel like nothing causes more anxiety in a traditional cab than establishing the financial reality up front. The moment you are in and the destination is set, that meter starts running.
The meter is a brilliant but truly terrifying psychological device. It's a visual representation of time converting into money, just ticking away right in your line of sight.
It induces this low grade panic, especially if you're in a city you don't know well. You hit gridlock, the car is idling, and that digital number just keeps climbing.
Oh, it's the worst.
So the sources provide these phrases to manage this anxiety before the car even shifts into drive. Things like, how much is it to Heathrow from here? Or how much will that cost?
You're trying to establish a deterministic boundary around what is an inherently unpredictable event.
Right, traffic could do anything. But there is a specific scenario in one of the vocabulary guides that really highlights the complexity of this negotiation. It involves a driver offering a faster route based on GPS data.
Oh, yeah. That scenario is fascinating because it introduces a rapid value judgment.
A literal cost benefit analysis on the fly.
Exactly. So in the role play, the passenger is trying to get to Terminal 5 by 10:00 a.m. for a flight. The driver notes heavy traffic and suggests a GPS-guided detour. But the detour comes with a cost. The driver states, the normal route to the airport costs $30, but GPS will add an additional $20 to the fare.
Wait, that is a massive upcharge. That's a 66% increase just to take the faster route.
It is, and it forces the passenger to advocate for their priorities in real time. In the role play, the passenger calculates the risk of missing the flight against the financial cost and says, that's not a big deal. Time is of the essence.
Wow, so they're explicitly buying back their own time.
Yes, and that requires a level of confidence and directness that is hard to muster, especially in a foreign language.
Yeah.
You also have to consider the cognitive load of doing this in a foreign currency.
Oh, definitely. Doing that math in your head while stressed.
Right. Another scenario in the sources ends with a 600 rupee fare, and the passenger utilizes the universal phrase of completion. Here you go, please keep the change.
The tip as the final social lubricant. I love that. But wait, before we even get to the tip, the physical drop-off requires its own highly specialized spatial vocabulary. The driver usually prompts the passenger as they approach the destination with something like, where shall I drop you off?
At which point, the passenger has to use these very specific locational cues. The tutorials suggest phrases like, could you let me off over here on the right, please? Or,
Wow.
I'd like to get off over there by the gates.
There is one exceptionally descriptive phrase suggested, I think it was, could you stop just there beyond the bushes?
Yes, I love that one.
I mean, I'm picturing someone directing a cab in the dark, trying to point out a shadowy hedge. It requires the driver to follow your exact visual perspective from the back seat.
It's a very collaborative moment.
But, I'm looking at all these phrases, asking for fares, negotiating GPS routes, verbally guiding the driver to the exact drop-off point, and I feel like we're studying a dying language here.
A dying language. How so?
Well, with the global ubiquity of ride-hailing apps, the destination is preset before you even open the door. The fare is pre-calculated by some server farm in California. The drop-off pin is exact down to the square meter. Doesn't the app strip away our need and maybe even our ability to advocate for ourselves in the car?
Oh, it absolutely entirely rewires the passenger-driver interface. We have moved from a system of constant, active verbal negotiation to one of digital assumption and silent execution.
Right, you open the door, verify a name for John, and the entire contract is implicitly sealed.
Yeah, you never even have to look them in the eye. You are essentially trusting the little blue line on your smartphone screen more than the person actually operating the 2-ton piece of machinery.
It's kind of wild when you put it like that.
It is. I mean, it eliminates the specific anxieties of the traditional cab, the ticking meter, the fear of being intentionally driven the long way around, the awkwardness of haggling over a route. But you are touching on a significant trade-off here.
Yeah, what are we losing?
We've outsourced our spatial awareness and our negotiation skills to an algorithm. In a traditional black cab, if the driver takes a sudden, unexplained left turn, you have the vocabulary ready. You say, "Excuse me, I thought we were taking the highway." You actively participate in the journey.
Oh, that's so true. Now, if the app driver takes a weird turn, passengers usually just sit in the back in a state of silent panic,
Exactly, just staring at their phones.
frantically refreshing the map, wondering if the app knows about a road closure or if they are being kidnapped. We have lost the script for polite, real-time course correction.
We are so reliant on the technology mediating the transaction that speaking up feels like violating the terms of service.
That's a great way to put it, violating the terms of service. And that loss of verbal agency fundamentally alters how we occupy the physical space too. Once you have navigated the transaction, whether you're haggling over the meter or blindly trusting the app, you have to figure out how to physically exist in that enclosed environment.
Right, the etiquette of where you place your body and how you treat the interior of the vehicle is deeply psychological.
So let's dig into the seating choices, because this is where the cultural wires get crossed all the time. The physical architecture of the vehicle plays a huge role here. Our sources on UK taxi etiquette draw a hard line between traditional black cabs and private hire vehicles.
They do. The iconic London black cab is purpose-built for the separation of driver and passenger.
It's like a totally different room back there.
Exactly. The rear compartment is a distinct, spacious room, often with a glass partition. The driver's area is effectively sealed off. So the physical design dictates the social relationship. It is purely transactional.
Yeah.
You are the cargo.
The cargo, I love that. But private hire vehicles, which encompass standard minicabs, the vast majority of Ubers, Lyfts, and just everyday sedans, force a shared spatial dynamic.
Right, there is no glass partition. You are sitting inside a standard passenger car.
And this inevitably leads to the most fraught decision a passenger can make, the front seat debate.
Oh, the front seat debate. The etiquette guides from 001 taxis and Corker cars address this directly. The golden rule is absolute. If you desire to sit in the front passenger seat, you must ask permission first.
You can't just assume.
It is a request, never an assumption.
I find this fascinating because passenger motivations vary so wildly here. Some people, especially those from cultures that heavily emphasize egalitarianism, like, Australians or Americans, often feel that sitting in the back seat is incredibly rude.
Yes, they feel like they are treating the driver like a chauffeur or a servant.
Exactly. So they throw open the front door and slide in right next to the driver to prove they're just one of the guys, completely unaware that they might be making the driver incredibly uncomfortable.
And they usually are. The etiquette guide explicitly notes that many drivers strongly prefer passengers to remain in the back.
Really? Just across the board?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
From the driver's perspective, this isn't about class dynamics. It is about safety, professionalism, and the preservation of their workspace. Having a complete stranger suddenly occupying the seat inches away from you within your personal bubble while you're attempting to safely navigate heavy urban traffic,
Mm.
it's distracting and potentially threatening.
That makes total sense. The front seat implies an intimate, friendly relationship. Like, we are co pilots, we are equals on a road trip. But the back seat establishes a necessary service boundary.
Exactly.
I love thinking about the taxi as a hybrid space. It serves a public utility function, like a city bus, but you are essentially renting out a private individual's mobile office for 30 minutes. You wouldn't walk into someone's cubicle, sit on their desk, and start eating a sandwich.
No, you definitely wouldn't. And the idea of the mobile office is precisely why the etiquette guides spend so much time on basic vehicular respect. Passengers frequently conflate the temporary rental of the space with ownership of the space.
Which leads to some pretty bad behavior.
It does. The guides remind passengers to always buckle up, not just for personal safety, but because in many jurisdictions, an unbuckled passenger can result in a fine for the driver.
Oh, wow, I hadn't thought of that. They also lay down the law on food and trash. Do not eat or drink in the cab. Even if there isn't a glaring red sign saying no food, you should assume the driver doesn't want the smell of your garlic fries lingering in their upholstery for the next 6 fares.
Absolutely. And keeping bags in the footwell rather than on the seats prevents damage to the fabric. You are basically trying to leave no trace.
And this concept of respecting the driver's domain extends all the way to the drop off logistics we mentioned earlier with the role play. You might use the perfect English phrase to say, "Could you pull over right here by the gates?" But the etiquette guides point out a harsh reality.
Which is that drivers are bound by local traffic regulations, not passenger convenience.
Yes, I have seen this conflict play out so many times. A passenger points to a spot directly in front of the restaurant, but it's a bus stop or a red zone, or there are double yellow lines.
The driver has to adjust.
Right. The driver pulls forward another block to a legal loading zone, and the passenger gets visibly irritated because now they have to walk a little bit in the rain.
And the passenger views that refusal as bad service. But the driver is protecting their livelihood. A traffic citation for an illegal stop could wipe out their earnings for the entire day.
Just for one drop off.
Right. So the etiquette requires the passenger to subordinate their immediate convenience to the driver's professional judgment and legal safety. You have to trust that they know the constraints of their environment better than you do.
Okay, so you've handled the logistics. You are sitting in the back seat, you are buckled in, your luggage is safely in the trunk, and the driver is navigating toward your destination.
The easy part is over.
Right. Now we arrive at the true crucible of the taxi experience, the psychological tightrope, the audio environment.
It's a management of silence versus conversation.
Exactly. Do you speak or do you guard the silence? Because once those doors close, the ambient noise drops away, and the silence in a car with a stranger can become deafening.
It really can. According to dispatchers, the hallmark of a veteran driver is the ability to rapidly assess the passenger's desired audio environment. They call it reading the room, or in this case, reading the rearview mirror.
Reading the rearview mirror, that's clever.
Body language is the primary metric here. The UK dispatch guides explicitly state that if a passenger enters the vehicle and immediately puts on headphones, that is the universal, non-negotiable signal for isolation.
The universal shield.
Yes, the driver will not initiate conversation unless it is an absolute emergency regarding the route.
So headphones are the modern equivalent of putting up a physical wall. But what happens if you don't have headphones? What if you are just sitting there staring out the window and the driver starts making cheerful small talk?
And you just don't have the energy.
Exactly. You've had a brutal day, you are completely drained, and you simply do not have the emotional bandwidth to entertain a stranger. I was looking at this incredibly revealing thread from the Interpersonal Skill Stack Exchange about this very thing.
Oh, I saw that.
The user poses a desperate question. How do I tell a taxi driver that I don't like to chat?
The framing of that question on the forum is vital to understanding the passenger's mindset. The user describes feeling trapped. They are in a moving vehicle, so they cannot physically leave the situation.
Right.
More importantly, they state they cannot risk being perceived as rude to someone who has my life and time in his hands.
That perfectly articulates the vulnerability of the passenger. You don't want to offend the person controlling the locks and the steering wheel. So, how do people navigate this without causing offense?
The forum responses are a fascinating study in polite evasion and social engineering.
They really are. Many users advocate for a preemptive, soft pedaled excuse, basically establishing a medical or emotional barrier right out of the gate.
Like what?
For example, saying, I have a pounding headache, I'm just going to close my eyes for a bit. Or, I have a lot on my mind with work, I need to use this time to de stress. It shifts the responsibility for the silence onto the passenger's internal state, rather than a rejection of the driver's company. It's not you, it's me of transit.
Exactly.
Another highly recommended tactic is the visual block. You pull out your smartphone, furrow your brow, and pretend to furiously type out an important email. You manufacture this aura of busyness, relying on the social norm that it is rude to interrupt someone who is working.
Which is so common now.
It is, but I think my favorite answer on the entire thread, though, was from a user who rejected all the tiptoeing. They argued for treating both parties as functional adults and simply saying, cheers, mate, but I'm not really in the mood for chatting.
It is direct.
Yeah.
And it uses a friendly colloquialism, cheers, mate, to soften the blow, but it establishes an impermeable boundary. However, the anxiety surrounding this exact interaction has grown so profound that the technology sector has actually stepped in to engineer a solution, completely bypassing the need for human boundary setting.
This is where the sociodynamics get truly dystopian. Let's talk about Uber's quiet mode.
It's a huge shift.
It really is. This was a major feature rollout that Mashable reported on. For passengers booking premium rides, specifically Uber Black and Uber SUV, the app introduced a suite of preference toggles. Before the car even arrives, alongside setting the interior temperature or requesting help with luggage, you can actively select your preferred conversational state.
And the options are very specific.
They are. It's quiet preferred, happy to chat, or no preference.
The implementation of this feature forces us to ask deep questions about the trajectory of our digital society. We have reached a point where the prospect of politely asking another human being for silence is so daunting that we would rather a software algorithm deliver the message for us.
It's incredible. Think about your last ride-hailing experience. Have you ever stared blindly at your phone, scrolling through nothing, just projecting an aura of unavailability because you were too tired to talk?
Oh, everyone does it.
We all do it. But Uber looked at that universal social awkwardness and decided to commodify it. And I use that word intentionally because you cannot get quiet mode on a standard UberX. You literally have to pay a higher premium fare for a luxury vehicle to unlock the privilege of guaranteed silence.
It's wild.
We are financially penalizing interaction, or conversely, making peace and quiet a luxury good.
The financialization of boundaries is an excellent way to frame it.
Hmm.
But we also have to look at why the anxiety exists in the first place, specifically within the gig economy. Why are we so terrified of telling a gig driver, I'm not in the mood to chat?
Because of the ratings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is because the ride-hailing ecosystem operates on a mutual surveillance system. Drivers and passengers constantly rate each other.
5-star rating system. It hangs over every interaction like a sword of Damocles.
If you politely tell a driver you don't want to talk, there is a lingering, perhaps irrational fear that the driver will take offense, perceive you as haughty or rude, and silently penalize you with a 1-star rating.
And a low passenger rating has real consequences.
It does. It can result in longer wait times or even banishment from the platform. So the quiet mode button acts as an algorithmic shield. It offloads the social friction. The app assumes the burden of rejection, protecting your digital reputation.
The app becomes the bad guy so you don't have to be. It's fascinating, but it also feels slightly tragic. We are losing the muscle memory of basic interpersonal negotiation.
Yeah, we are insulating ourselves.
But suppose we flip the scenario. Suppose you don't select quiet mode. You get into the back of a standard cab, the driver makes an opening gambit, and you actually want to engage. How do we construct a successful conversation with a complete stranger whose only shared context is the current traffic conditions?
Well, there is a highly structured taxonomy to taxi small talk. It is a very ritualized exchange.
Mm.
Industry blogs, like Taxi Point, have actually cataloged the most frequent conversational openers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there are three questions that form the absolute bedrock of passenger-driver interaction.
I feel like I have asked these exact three questions in every city I've ever visited. The first one is always, how long have you been driving a cab?
It is the perfect low-stakes icebreaker. It demonstrates a polite interest in their professional background without demanding deep personal revelation. It allows the driver to answer with a simple time frame or to expand into a narrative about their previous careers.
The second standard question naturally follows, do you like the job?
This moves the dial slightly closer to personal feeling. It invites empathy. As the industry literature notes, the driver has total control over how they answer this.
They can keep it light or go deep.
Exactly. They might pivot to the positives, discussing the freedom of being an independent contractor and not having a boss looking over their shoulder. Or they might use the opening to vent about the reality of the work, the crippling traffic, the rising cost of fuel, the physical toll of sitting for 10 hours a day. It lets the driver set the emotional tone of the ride.
And the third question leverages their specific expertise. What are the best places to visit around here? Or where should I get dinner?
Yes. Tapping into local knowledge.
You are acknowledging them as the ultimate local authority. They traverse the city's arteries all day. They know which highly reviewed restaurants are actually tourist traps and where the genuinely good street food is. But what if you want to push past that ritualized small talk? The Student Card blog, which is aimed at younger travelers, suggests strategies for building genuine rapport.
Right, the blog encourages passengers to ask more narrative-driven questions, prompting the driver with, what is the craziest thing you've ever seen while driving? Or, what's the longest fare you've ever taken?
I was looking at those suggestions and I found myself wondering if they border on intrusive, but then I realized every single cab driver on earth has a repertoire of bizarre late night stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's part of the mythology of the job. The blog also suggests asking them to put on their favorite song. It's a way of sharing their environment rather than just occupying it.
But while encouraging rapport, the guidelines are equally strict about taboo subjects. Establishing rapport does not mean erasing the professional boundary.
You have to know where the line is.
You do. The primary directive is unequivocal.
Mm.
Never hit on your driver. Do not ask about their marital status. Do not comment on their physical appearance. And do not treat the enclosed vehicle as a dating environment.
It is their workplace. You wouldn't want someone trapping you at your desk and making unwanted advances. The guides also warn against demanding that the driver break the law to hurry up and strongly advise steering clear of highly charged topics like deep political probing or aggressive questioning about their religion.
You want to maintain a neutral, pleasant equilibrium.
Right. And when that equilibrium is achieved, the cab can transform into something incredibly profound.
It really can. We found a transcript from an easy English practice video that beautifully captures the higher potential of this space. It documents a conversation between a veteran London taxi driver and a very exhausted passenger.
The dialogue is so striking. The passenger gets in and immediately lays her cards on the table. She says, I've had a very long and busy day at work, and right now I just want to relax and enjoy a quiet ride home. She is setting the boundary, but doing it with vulnerability.
And the driver's response demonstrates masterful emotional intelligence. He validates her state of mind entirely. He replies, I completely understand how you feel, madam, because many passengers enter my taxi with tired faces after work, and by the time they reach home, they usually look much calmer and lighter.
That is so perceptive. The passenger then uses this incredible phrase. She describes the taxi ride as a slow and gentle transition between work life and home life. I haven't been able to stop thinking about that framing. We usually think of commuting as dead time, a frustrating obstacle between where we are and where we want to be, but she reclaims it as a necessary emotional airlock.
An emotional airlock is a brilliant metaphor. Psychological transition spaces are vital. If you could teleport instantly from a highly stressful office environment directly into your living room, you would carry all of that residual cortisol and anxiety straight to your family. You need a decompression chamber to shed the professional persona before adopting the domestic one.
Yeah, this is exactly why the veteran driver acts as a sort of bartender on wheels. Think about the phenomenon of the stranger on a train. We often feel more comfortable confessing our deepest anxieties, complaining about our terrible bosses, or venting about our failing marriages to a complete stranger in a taxi than we do to our closest friends.
It's so true, but why is that?
Because the taxi driver exists entirely outside of our social ecosystem.
Ah, they are an impartial observer with zero stakes in your personal life. The likelihood of your social circles ever intersecting is virtually nil. They offer a temporary, non-judgmental holding space for your psychological unburdening. The Zoom Dispatch Guide actually touches on the mechanics of how drivers facilitate this. Skilled drivers employ active listening techniques. They offer sympathetic noises, they mirror the passenger's tone, and they utilize universal, safe topics to maintain a comforting baseline of engagement.
Though, to be pragmatic, the dispatch guides also remind us that this emotional labor is financially motivated. Building rapport, acting as an impromptu therapist, offering that gentle transition space, it isn't just altruism, it's excellent customer service.
And excellent customer service translates directly into higher tips.
Yep. But, the financial incentive undeniably underpins the empathy. However, this entire paradigm we have constructed, the polite linguistic dances, the algorithmic quiet modes shielding our anxieties, the gentle therapeutic transitions of the London Cabot represents a very specific, somewhat sanitized, Western-centric view of the transit experience.
It's the idealized version of the ride. But if we pull the lens back and examine the taxi as a global phenomenon, the space is not always a quiet sanctuary. Often it is a loud, abrasive, and highly contested arena.
Definitely. To understand the full spectrum of the taxi environment, we must examine what happens when the vehicle operates less like a private service and more like a mass transit necessity.
Which brings us to a deeply analytical academic study from the University of South Africa titled A Taxi Ride to Critical Literacy.
Right, so we are shifting focus to the Tikisi, the commuter minibus taxis that serve as the absolute backbone of public transportation in many South African townships. And we need to look closely at the methodology of this study because it wasn't just a sociologist observing from afar.
No, it's very hands-on.
The researcher, Rocky Sabanda, enlisted 20 high school students who rely on these minibus taxis every single day to act as co-researchers.
And the objective was to have these students gather and critically analyze everyday texts within their environment. In this case, the texts were the ubiquitous bumper stickers plastered inside and outside the minibus taxis.
Now, we aren't talking about corporate advertising or standard "my child is an honor student" stickers. The study reveals that these stickers are a raw, unfiltered medium for the taxi drivers and owners to broadcast their personal ideologies to a captive audience.
Right, the printers who manufacture these stickers confirm that they print exactly what the drivers dictate. The bumper sticker acts as a megaphone for the driver's worldview.
And that worldview, as documented by the high school students, frequently acts as a stark, often disturbing cultural mirror. The texts confront deep-seated societal issues head-on. Just to be clear for you listening, we are reporting on what the researchers found to convey the reality of this environment without endorsing any of these viewpoints.
Yes, the students cataloged numerous stickers displaying blatant xenophobia. One particularly jarring example recorded in the study read, "Black is beautiful, but too black is a crime."
Wow. And the high schoolers analyzing that text immediately recognized the terrifying subtext. They identified it as a direct reflection of the Afrophobia and violence directed at foreign African nationals living in their communities. The taxi, a vehicle meant to move people through a community, was physically broadcasting division.
It's intense. But the most pervasive theme the students analyzed, the one that dominated the visual space of the taxis, was a hyper-aggressive display of machismo and misogyny.
The sheer volume of sexist messaging they found is alarming. The students documented texts that reduced women to financial opportunists or objects of physical conquest. Examples included, "The only time women listen is when money speaks," and "If you hate peace, get married."
And some crossed the line from cynical to overtly predatory, like the sticker that read, "Save water, bath with your neighbor's daughter."
Imagine being a young woman, relying on this vehicle to get to school or work, and having that message staring you in the face from the dashboard. The study actually interviewed the drivers to understand the intent behind these choices. It wasn't just edgy humor to them. One driver explicitly stated he displayed sexist stickers because he firmly believed the derogatory insinuations about women were true.
Another driver's explanation was deeply tied to the performance of dominance. He suggested that displaying stickers endorsing gender-based violence or extreme chauvinism was necessary to project toughness. In his view, to command respect in the hyper-competitive taxi industry, a driver must appear arrogant and unyielding. Empathy, or appearing too soft, is viewed as a professional liability.
The contrast there is staggering. We just talked about London drivers utilizing empathy and active listening to maximize their tips. Here, we see an environment where the projection of aggressive dominance is viewed as the necessary currency of survival.
It's a completely different paradigm.
But the most compelling aspect of Savanda's study is how the high school students, the passengers, responded to this environment. They engaged in critical literacy. They didn't passively consume the text, they interrogated and challenged it.
They identified the drivers as clinging to archaic patriarchal belief systems. They correctly interpreted the stickers not as jokes, but as deliberate instruments of power intended to intimidate women and assert control over the social space of the vehicle.
One student provided a brilliant sociological observation, stating that taxi drivers often confuse taxis with their homes. They want to play father figure to every passenger, especially women.
That student hit on the exact spatial paradox we discussed earlier. The driver views the minibus not as a public utility serving the community, but as their personal fiefdom. They are the patriarch of the rolling household. And this leads to a critical divergence in how passenger behavior is interpreted, specifically regarding silence.
Yes, we discussed silence earlier as a luxury, a preference indicated by headphones or an app setting. In the South African minibus taxi, silence is weaponized. Why do the passengers, particularly the female students, sit in silence while surrounded by hostile, degrading texts?
The drivers attempted to claim the silence was a form of cultural respect. One driver invoked traditional norms, arguing that women do not challenge these explicit stickers because their culture forbids the public discussion of sexual matters.
Right.
He quoted a Zulu proverb in Jobo Ayathungalwa Ebandla, which translates to, "Private matters are never discussed in public." He was essentially using cultural heritage as a shield to justify a hostile environment.
But the high school students forcefully dismantled that narrative. They articulated that the silence was not born of cultural deference, but of self-preservation. It was driven by fear.
The minibus taxi industry in South Africa has a well-documented history of violence. The students explicitly noted that passengers do not speak up because they are terrified of the driver's potential for physical retaliation.
And the drivers know it. One driver essentially admitted it on the record, boasting that his passengers wouldn't dare challenge his offensive stickers because they know his capacity for violence. He literally told the researcher, "I can smash them with a club."
It perfectly illustrates the concept of the captive audience. The passengers are physically trapped inside the driver's ideological echo chamber. They cannot simply order a premium quiet mode ride. They must endure the psychological pressure of the space to fulfill their basic need for mobility.
It makes you realize why the taxi is such a potent, volatile canvas for cultural expression compared to other forms of transit. You don't see the driver of a municipal city bus pasting their personal manifestos over the windows. The bus is a sterilized public utility with corporate oversight.
Exactly. The taxi occupies that ambiguous gray zone. It serves the public, but it is fundamentally a private enterprise. The owner-operator model allows the driver to curate the environment entirely. The vehicle becomes a microcosm of the broader society, a tightly compressed box where issues of class struggle, gender inequality, and cultural friction are forced into unavoidable, immediate contact.
You cannot look away from the driver's worldview when it is plastered inches from your face. The driver is the narrator of the journey, both literally and sociologically. And that concept, the driver as the narrator of the city, is beautifully crystallized in our final source, the Wikipedia entry for a landmark piece of Middle Eastern literature.
We are looking at the book Taxi, written by the Egyptian author Khaled Al-Khamisi, published in 2006.
It became an absolute sensation, a massive bestseller in Egypt, but it isn't a traditional novel with a linear plot. It is a collection of 58 short stories, essentially crafted from the author's real-life conversations with taxi drivers navigating the choked, chaotic streets of Cairo.
Al-Khamisi dedicated the book to the life that lives in the words of poor people. The literary significance of the work hinges on its linguistic execution. The stories are written primarily in the colloquial Egyptian dialect, the everyday Arabic spoken on the streets, rather than the formal classical Arabic usually reserved for literature.
Which was a revolutionary choice. Using colloquial dialect had historically been looked down upon in literary circles. But by using the authentic, unfiltered voices of the cab drivers, Al-Khamisi managed to capture the true beating pulse of contemporary Cairo.
He really did.
The drivers in his book aren't just steering wheels with hands. They are the Greek chorus of the city. They narrate the economic struggles, the political corruption, the dark humor, and the profound resilience of the people.
The success of Taxi proves that the voices occupying the front seat are vital records of human experience. Whether it is a London cabbie offering a gentle, empathetic transition space, a South African driver projecting his worldview onto a bumper sticker, or a Cairene driver weaving tales in gridlock, the taxi is a profound lens into the urban sociology of a nation.
So take a step back and look at the immense territory we've covered on this deep dive. We started with the tactical realities of the curb. You are now equipped with the nuanced linguistic toolkit to initiate a ride understanding why asking, "Can you take my bag to the trunk, please?" is a negotiation of physical territory.
You know how to establish the financial reality of the meter, weigh the cost benefit of a GPS detour, and deploy exact spatial phrases for the drop-off.
Right. We examine the physical etiquette and proxemics of the car, understanding why sliding into the front seat without permission violates the unspoken service boundary, and why the taxi must be respected as a hybrid public-private workspace.
We navigated the incredibly fraught audio environment too. We explored the polite social engineering required to evade unwanted small talk, and we grappled at the implications of the gig economy, driving tech companies to literally monetize our fear of awkwardness with a quiet mode button.
We analyze the art of building genuine rapport, recognizing the veteran driver as the bartender on wheels who provides a crucial psychological decompression chamber between our public and private lives.
And finally, we pulled back the lens to view the taxi as a potent cultural mirror. Through the critical literacy of South African students analyzing minibus bumper stickers and the colloquial literature of Egyptian cabbie tales, we saw how the enclosed space of a vehicle forces the rawest dynamics of societal power into sharp focus.
It is infinitely more complex than just a ride from point A to point B. It is a daily, localized sociological experiment. Which brings me to a final, somewhat provocative thought for you to ponder the next time you find yourself standing on a street corner raising your hand. Throughout this entire deep dive, every single phenomenon we've discussed, the negotiation of territory, the anxiety over the meter, the delicate dance of small talk, the profound unburdening of secrets, and the clash of cultural ideologies relies entirely on the presence of one specific variable:
The human driver.
the human driver. But the landscape of global transportation is undergoing a seismic structural shift right beneath our feet.
We are rapidly accelerating into the era of autonomous vehicles. The technology is no longer hypothetical.
It is already on the streets. One of our sources briefly mentioned a bizarre, almost comical phenomenon occurring right now during this transitional phase. DoorDash delivery drivers are currently being paid to follow Waymo robotaxis around solely to walk up and physically close the doors of the autonomous cars because the robots haven't mastered that mechanical step yet.
Which is just wild to think about.
Think about the trajectory that points toward. We are moving inexorably toward a world dominated by self-driving robotaxis. And when the human driver vanishes completely from the equation, well, we permanently solve the problem of awkward small talk.
Yeah, you will never need to pay a premium for a quiet mode button again.
Exactly. You won't have to worry about the power dynamics of the front seat versus the back seat, or whether a bumper sticker is making you feel unsafe. The friction is gone. But we have to ask ourselves, what exactly are we losing in the name of frictionless transit?
That's a huge question.
If the taxi driver is the unfiltered Greek chorus of the city, the bartender on wheels who listens to your worst days, the person who provides that vital, slow, and gentle transition between your stressful job and your family, does removing them mean we amputate a vital, irreplaceable piece of human culture? If that confessional booth on wheels permanently loses its confessor, does it just become another empty, sterile box moving mindlessly through traffic? Just something for you to think about next time you pull the handle and slide into the back seat.